To the first session of DevCon. Of course, if you already took the training day yesterday, you've already seen a bunch of useful stuff. I'm hoping to teach you some even better stuff today, especially after that awesome presentation last night. So this session is augmenting the FileMaker Go SDK. I'm also going to do a quick introduction during the session on how to make an iOS SDK app, because I realized there wasn't a session here this year for that. So if you missed the one last year, I'm going to show you just briefly how to do it this year and a shortcut to make it go a lot faster. So who am I? Mike Beargie. You may have seen my name around before. I've get around a little bit on the community. I'm a senior application developer at MainSpring, a platinum partner and winner of the North American Business Driver of the Year awards for the last 3 years straight. I'm certified in versions 11 through 16. And the community, I am a part of the Champions program to share social media and evangelize the platform, as you will. I'm also part of the MVP program that works with FileMaker to improve the community, improve the Jive platform, and kind of tip them off if there's any hot topics. In 2014, and 2016, I was rewarded for my community contributions with the FileMaker Excellence Award. And thank you very much for sharing all of your positive feedback with me over the years. It's really kept me going and driving to share with you guys. So a man that's as busy as me has to have hobbies to get him out of the house. After working at home for 4 years now, you can say I'm lucky I still speak English and have social skills. So I get out and I do a lot of stuff. So I'm outdoors all the time, hiking and biking. I do woodworking and I teach woodworking as well at our local makerspace, the largest in the world, the Columbus Idea Foundry. My wife and I try to take a trip every year to go skiing. We go with a couple FileMaker developers as well. So if you're a ski bum like me and want to go hang out in the wintertime somewhere for a week, just look me up and let us know. And lastly, I'm funny story. My wife a couple years ago bought me a fish tank because she said she needed something moving in my office aside from me. So I got hooked on saltwater aquariums, and I'm now part of a group that is leading an effort to populate coral in your home aquarium so that none of it is wild harvested. We'll see some pictures of that coral later on in one of my demos. So I want to start off with a very important timeline for you guys to realize, because as much as we saw of what's coming in the future of the FileMaker platform yesterday, it's really important for us to look back to see how long FileMaker has been interested in mobile devices. And that time is 17 years. So that's a very long time to be interested in mobile pocket handheld devices. So of course, in the old days, it was FileMaker Mobile on Palm OS and Windows CE. Then, the iPhone and the iPad came out. In between those two releases, there was a third-party app called FM Touch that I want to put out there because it really led iOS, FileMaker into iOS. Then FileMaker released FileMaker Go 1.0. And then ever since 12 came out, they have in step released a copy of FileMaker Go 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. As was noted last night during the presentation, we got the iOS SDK last year with 15. It was improved this year, and I hope that it will be continually improved for additional things. So let's talk a little bit about the iOS SDK. So getting started, FileMaker provides a great checklist online. The link's going to be in the resources that I'm going to hand out at the after the session. But it's basically just a checklist that you have to follow to set up your own iOS apps. The two most important things that you're going to need are a FileMaker developer subscription. This gives you access to download the SDK files. And I believe you also get a test copy of Server as well with that. So it's a 2-for-1 deal, so to speak. You're also going to need an Apple developer subscription, which will let you basically add certificates to sign your apps and be able to compile them and distribute them. So some of the deployment tips we'll go over in the demo for that. And we'll also go over in the folder structure. So I am actually already at my first demo, guys. This is great. So what I'm going to demonstrate now is just a basic on how to create an SDK app. So all the files you're seeing, well, except for the plugin files, which you have to get from the developers themselves, and the SDK files, which you're going to have to get from FileMaker, but all of the other files are going to be included with my demo session materials. So let's start off with the demo app we're going to be looking at today. And this is going to be the main FileMaker app that you see taken over. Just a simple thing put together with a couple of different functions that we've got going on. So this is right now a FileMaker file, right? And just to, out of curiosity, I'm just going to write some like stuff in here so you guys know I'm not yanking your chain. Or so I'm going to put that in there, and we'll come back to that later to show you that. So this is a copy of FileMaker's app SDK instructions. So it just has a getting started before you begin, tips, how to download and install Xcode, how to download the app SDK, creating this project. So once you get to this part where you're actually creating the iOS project, this is where we can save some time. And the way we're going to save some time is by using a product by Alexei Dubov, who is a developer in the Ukraine. Here, I was making my Goya demo, so let me go back to this one. So can everybody read that? Is that okay? Do I need to zoom in at all? All right, I'll see if I can. If I can't, I'll try to go over, zoom in on each part of this. So Alexei Dubov's app is basically a FileMaker file that will create your Xcode project for you. So you don't have to run anything command line. You don't have to generate your own image files. You can just put all of that in here, and it'll do it for you. So for this, I'm going to give it my ADV5 demo app. I'm actually going to name this live com.FileMaker app live demo app live. I'm going to choose where my SDK folder is, and that's on the desktop. And I haven't expanded it, so let me just expand that package there. So I'm going to point to that folder. So this is all the stuff that comes with the iOS SDK. It's a expander in the command line. So when you run in the command line, it creates all the folders for you, so you don't need to worry about making your own folder structure. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to make a new destination folder here. Call this ADV005 live. Great. And you saw it created that folder up there. So this has a demo file in it, but I'm actually going to place our 85 demo app in there, so you can put that in there. I've already dragged my image in there. And Alexei has added in so that you can add frameworks to this, and we're going to add track FM, which I'm going to show you in the demo for GPS tracking. And there are some advanced things as well that you can set in here, including an additional icon image size. So once that's all done, I'm just going to hit run. And sorry, my MacBook's a little old, so it's just going to chug through this. There we go, almost done, and it's done. So click the done button, and there is my project directory. So you can tell it's made my Xcode project there. It's made my resources. You can see the framework is there for Track FM. And if I click through in here, you'll see you can tell you're using the 16 SDK because you now get a folder in here called plugins. If you're using the 15 SDK, that folder will not be there. So that's a good thing to think of. And also there's a 16.0.2 SDK with the latest updates, so that's the one you want to download. Then in the solution files, you can see it's put our demo app inside of solution files. So let's just open this up in Xcode. And you can see over here, I'm going to minimize that sidebar, but we've got our folder structure that matches here. Now, part of what you have to set up for FileMaker is this config file. This is where you're going to tell FileMaker, this is the file I want to launch. You're going to give it a help URL here. So this can be some documentation you host online or a link to your app online so that when somebody clicks help, they go somewhere. And then this copy option determines how the iOS SDK app loads your file each time the app is launched. So in our case, we're launching it every time because we're testing it over and over again. But on the final version, I might only want to set it to load for the first time the application is run and then use that same file for each subsequent time. And then new in 16 as well is some encryption options. I'm not going to cover this, it's a little more advanced, but if your files are encrypted at rest, you need a password to open those files. And if you have multiple files in your iOS app, then you're going to need to decrypt all of those files in here in your config file. So you can see this track FM framework is here. I'm also going to show you that that has automatically been linked up with Alexi's app. So this embedded framework is there. And you'll see I'm getting an error saying signing for this requires a development team. So I'm certified. I'm going to choose my development team. It's hopefully going to create my profile. And you see there's my Apple developer ID. Everybody's going to copy that down and try to hack my account now, but it won't get you anywhere. Their code signing is pretty secure, as you can imagine. But if you want to write apps for me, by all means, please get in touch. So in here in the folder structure, you see there's our solution file again. There's no plugins in here, so if I want to install plugins, I can just right-click on this folder, say Show in Finder again. And if I go back to my desktop, we had some plugins on here, so there's base elements. I'm going to copy that file and just paste it in there, and actually paste it in the right place. There we go. So now base elements plugin is installed in my iOS SDK app. That's all there is to installation. It's not that difficult to do, so FileMaker made it very easy for us. Now for Monkey Bread, their plugin comes inside of an actual DMG file, which, there it goes. They are. With their .fm plugin extension, same extension, and same, it's pretty much just the same as installing it in your extensions folder. And well, so there is now a Mac version, a Windows 32 version, a Windows 64 version, a Linux version for FileMaker Cloud, and the iOS plugin version. And then there's even another one for iOS, what do you call it, for targets for testing. So there's two separate iOS plugins for, and it depends on the plugin developer. Like obviously, not all plugin developers have developed a plugin for the iOS SDK yet. It'll be great when they do, but it's only been available since May, so we're a little bit limited right now. So here's the Monkey Bread plugin. I'm going to copy that in as well. Licensing is per plugin developer, so you have to discuss that with plugin developers. I'll cover that in later slides as well. Let's see, here's our live file, live plugins. I lost my place, but there it is. There we go. So now I've got Monkey Bread installed as well. So I'm going to quit out of that. So that's really most of what you have to do to set up an iOS SDK app. And everybody's going to be like, well, press play and see what happens. And I was like, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm actually going to switch to a different project that I've thoroughly tested for the next demo. So we're going to go back into our keynote here for a second. So that's really the process that I followed to build this demo app for you guys. Is I built the FileMaker file. I have the plugins on the desktop version so that I can access the functions to develop it. Then I added the plugins to the iOS version, compiled it all together, and we're good to go. So there's a few different methods, and the one I want to shout out first was, what did we do before we had the plugins in FileMaker 16 and the iOS SDK? That was the URL round trip method. So what the URL round trip method is something a lot of people are familiar with. You just use OpenURL to say, to do something that opens up another app, and then that other app opens up an FMP URL to send you back to your application. So there's a number of apps in the App Store that this is all they do. They answer that URL, and then they send you back to FileMaker. So there's one for credit card swiping. There's one to set system alerts to that will pop open and allow you to click on an FMP link in the future. Lots of stuff. These are all third party, so support is varied. Compatibility is also varied. So if it hasn't been updated in 3 years, it might not work with iOS 10. So testing is important for these. So as these were being developed over the last couple of years, they developed both as external apps that were released in the App Store that you would download, and you would get the screen switch as it switched to the other app and switch back to your FileMaker Go app. But recently, since the iOS app SDK came out last year, people have been able to release this as an internal framework too. And a framework is kind of like a decompiled plugin. It's just a same compiled chunk of code that lives inside of your app SDK, and it responds to that URL inside of your app, so you don't get the screen switch anymore. So this is the preferred way to do this now with these third-party things, is using that internal URL framework. So I'm actually going to demonstrate this internal URL framework with that track FM framework that we just used. So back into Xcode. But this time I'm going to open a different file. From my testing one. Actually, I don't want this full screen. So I haven't really done anything different at all on here. You can see it's still got the demo app in there. It's got the URL to this DevCon sessions contents, and then I'm opening up all the time. And then I've still got my plugins in here, but you'll see that I've also got a framework here as well. And actually, Monkey Bread does come with a framework too. So there's MBS init is in here as well. So now it is time to see how this works. So to test with your iOS device using Xcode, when you first pair up your device, it'll ask you if you want to pair this device as a testing device. So I'm going to plug this in. You're actually going to see generic device up here is now changed to my phone. I'm going to open up QuickTime here, and I'm going to mirror this so you guys can watch. So here's my iPhone. Man, somebody's been emailing me all morning. Great. So really all you have to do is once you're ready to go and test, you select your target, which iOS device you want to test to, and hit play. Right, so in a moment here, fingers crossed, you should see that icon for our app pop up there. Yep, and it's going to launch automatically for us. And in Xcode in the background, I want to actually open up the log. There's a log that runs here as well that gives you details as each one of those plugins and frameworks opens up. Now you'll see I got a security notice here. And the security notice is because Track FM tracks your GPS location continuously. So it's an app that will take your position reading at infrequent intervals as you move around and then write them to a remote FileMaker server. So if you ever want to do like logistics tracking where you're tracking a delivery driver throughout his routes, this is how to go. So I'm going to click allow on that. Track FM. And there will be links to all of the stuff in the session materials as well. So right now I've got you can see I've got a URL command in there. All the scripts in this, they just do open URL to perform those actions. You can see the parameter there is info, so this is going to give us an info dialog. So I'm going to hit track FM info. Come on. Oh, I'm going to hit perform track FM. There we go. The first two buttons are loading the URL. The third button is to load this. So you can tell this is a native iOS dialog because there's an image in this dialog. So you can tell this is plugin functionality on your iOS SDK. So my setup URL, you can tell, is a little more complex. Let me zoom in on this for you. So I'm basically setting up XML web publishing here to be able to write all of that GPS data remotely. And when you perform track FM, so if I hit that, it's not going to show anything to the user. So it runs in the background, and that's why it has the security warning. So it runs. I can tell you for a fact it runs because I've tested it, and I'll show you what that data looks like when it gets written out on the other side. So that looks like this. Come on. So it does a couple tests first, and then it starts writing in those values, the accuracy, your battery life, the device name, and the model, and longitude and latitude. So since this is always running until the user like reboots their phone or something, this information will continue to compile over time. So that is Track FM. How are we doing on time? Pretty good. All right. So that's the URL method of doing a round trip. Does anybody have any really quick questions on that? Does that kind of make sense? It happens on a separate thread. When it calls, the question was, does the framework happen on its own thread? And yes, it does. So you call the URL starts on, it's actually on the main dispatch. We can talk technical after the session if you want to, but it's basically spins up on requests and then responds and then spins down. Yeah. That's a good question that I don't know. So I'm not sure if you can put an FMP URL as your help URL to open up another FileMaker file. I'd be hesitant to, especially if you distribute it and find out it doesn't work. But I'll try to get an answer to that question a little later. All right, so on to the new way. That was the old way. That way still works, and the good thing about that, if I back up for a second, it's compatible. So that way works with FileMaker Go. You can use that external app with FileMaker Go. You can't use the internal framework method that I just demoed, but there are external apps that you can use with FileMaker Go that are compatible. So now that we're in FileMaker Go 16, we have the new iOS 16 SDK that comes with that plugin folder for us to use. This adds both the calculation engine functions of a plugin that we're using today, but it also adds the compatibility of adding your own script steps. So if you're using a plugin that's creating its own script steps as well now, because that was new with 16, which is also very exciting, you can now add those script steps as well to your iOS SDK app. So this does require you to have the desktop plugin as well as the mobile plugin. So talk to the plugin developer and make sure that you get a copy of both. And it's absolutely completely seamless, just like it is on the desktop. So there's no screen switching, there's no delay, there's no spinning wheel as it freezes and tries to go out and talk to a URL and come back. It just works directly in FileMaker itself. So it's a great user experience. So let's go, oh, sorry, meant to hit escape, hit next instead. So in our, I'm gonna go back into our demo file here. Oh, and I haven't demoed that yet. So once you're done testing your app, you just hit stop, and you'll see that on my iPhone it's closed out. It leaves a remnant file in there installed on your phone that you can just uninstall. It will overwrite that each time you hit play. But next time, I'm gonna get the security warning again when we compile this for the next time. So if you make an update to your FileMaker file like we did for this live demo, all you have to do is take that. I'm gonna close that out first. I'm going to go to my solution files. You really just only have to replace this file in here. Gonna tab, gonna go to desktop, I'm gonna grab that file. Gonna go back here. Gonna replace that. That's it. So now if I hit play again, we'll get that security warning again because I uninstalled the app off my iPhone. If I just let it overwrite, it wouldn't give me that security alert again. Okay, there's security. I just clicked on my screen. Doesn't quite work like that. QuickTime's not that great. But now you see our DevCon live demo is part of this app now. So that's all good there. So I'm gonna open that file just to show you really quick how this works. It works the exact same way as a plugin works. So if I open up scripts, I've got, here's my track FM. That's opening the URL. And here is a plugin. So this is our Monkey Bread plugin, and the first demo in Monkey Bread is I'm going to take a zip file of images. I'm going to unzip it into container field records. So for that, you'll see Monkey Bread is just called with its own MBS external function. And then you pass the first parameter is what you're running, what command you're running. So there's a number of commands in here that gives us extra data, that type of thing. And then you'll get this demo file. Then in our base elements demo, we're going to demonstrate how to execute native JavaScript inside of FileMaker's calculation engine. So that will be cool as well. So I'm sure you're all dying to see that. So let's jump over. So like I said, all of the stuff I use there is all pretty much, it's all compatible too with working on the desktop for these plugins. The GPS tracking doesn't work on the desktop for TrackFM, but that was designed specifically for iOS. But the Monkey Bread plugins, the base elements plugins I'm about to show you, they all work on both platforms. So you can get that seamless experience across both. So I'm going to full screen QuickTime here for this demo to show you how all this stuff works. So everything you're going to see here is plugin functionality that is either really hard to do natively in FileMaker or impossible to do in FileMaker. So first one was unzipping files. So I don't have any, I'm gonna swipe. I don't have anything here. No, nothing up my sleeves. This is a zip file that's just sitting in a container field. The insert button will get that container file for you. I'm hosting it on Dropbox until Dropbox invalidates the link. So if it ever does, let me know. I'll send you. It's just a zip folder of pictures. So I got an unzip button that runs that script I showed you here. And boom, we are unzipped. So that now has 24 images that just unzipped out of there. So these pictures, as I'm double swiping through them, are actually those corals I was talking about that we grow in our home tanks. So let me find one that I like. So that monkey bread plugin gives us a number of different pieces of metadata: the compressed size of the file, the uncompressed size, what compression method was used, the name of the original name of the file, that kind of stuff. The other cool thing that Monkey Bread has for us is an ImageMagick plugin, so that we can actually do in-app editing of this photo with FileMaker now. So I created a couple buttons on here to do things like rotate, flip, or get the dimensional info of this, or if I want to blur it, or if I want to scale it, or if I want to crop it, or if I want to swirl it, solarize. So you can do all of this stuff straight in FileMaker Go. So, I mean, this is powerful enough to release an app in like the App Store to do this stuff. But as a warning on that note, FileMaker doesn't recommend release for the App Store, but people have done it already. All right, so that is unzipping an images. So who wants to play a little game of Mad Libs with me? Everybody know what Mad Libs is? So for this demo, I have a Word document file here. I'm going to preview it so you can see. It's a doctor's note from the school nurse, and you'll see I've got a bunch of merge tags in here. And Mad Libs is just, taking a bunch of these values. Oh, autocorrect. My nemesis. It's a real word. So I'm only going to fill in a couple. You can fill in more, but I'm trying to keep it. So I'm going to hit my merge values button here. And you'll see I got a dialog, merge complete, insert into the right side container. It's going to give me my documents folder out of FileMaker Go so that I can choose this result, and that you can see that's time-stamped with the wrong timestamp. Oh no, I think it's because I didn't delete it first. Let's see. Yep, oh, there you go. So you can see it merged that in, come down with a case of gout. So that is merged into a Word document. Save that Word document for me. Again, plug-in functionality in your iOS app. So let's go on to our base elements demo that's in here. Each of these 3 demo buttons is going to load some JavaScript in here. I'm going to actually zoom in on some of these patterns outside of here, I think, because it's a little hard to read when it's in iOS. But essentially, what I have here is, let me get on the desktop for this. I don't want to do that because I'm running the demo. That's not good. I'll do the desktop one. Right, so I'm going to go to my base elements demo, copy, open up a text editor, and paste this. So this first demo it's a bunch of arrays of different countries. So if you're in FileMaker, you can use those new JSON functions that are out to create all of these different arrays. And let's say you want to do something like extra that FileMaker doesn't do out of the box, and I want to merge them all together. So in JavaScript, you can actually merge arrays together using concat. So I'm going to take my North America array and I'm going to concat all of these other arrays onto that. And then after that, I'm going to sort it by name. And then after that, I'm going to take that and I'm going to turn it from an array into a string that's just a comma-separated list. So if I go back to my demo here, you can see that JavaScript's in here. And now as I hit execute, it's instantaneous that it's going to do those actions. And you can see that our countries now are just a comma-separated list of all of those countries put together. The second demo on here, let me go grab that out of FileMaker. Is a loop. So just how we can loop in FileMaker, you can do loops in JavaScript too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to output a list of numbers, and JavaScript has a index that starts at 0, so as it counts up, it starts from 0. So I'm going to write 20 numbers out as a text screen, and it's going to say list of numbers with the numbers after it. So back over here in iOS, I got demo 2 loaded. I'm going to execute, and again, of course, instantaneous. There's my list of numbers. I can use this for all sorts of text parsing and generation types of things. I can feed thousands of records into this and have it instantly sorted. It's very powerful and pretty easy to use. The last one is a little more difficult to wrap your head around. This one's going to be an example of how to use regular expressions. So a regular expression is a code for matching a pattern. So this regular expression here is going to match any email address. And you can kind of get, there's an @ symbol in the middle there. You can see it's A to Z are numbers. And then I've got a string here that I'm going to output that says, you know, hey there, Fred, the new business address is that. And what I want to do is if somebody sends me a big like Word document that's got a whole bunch of email addresses in it that they want to put into a database, I need to extract those email addresses out of there. So with this regular expression pattern matching, I can do that. So I execute it. It uses that regular expression to look at that string and say, this is an email address. I'm going to put that out there for you. So again, instantaneous plugin functionality. So those were all the demos I got to. And the reason why I kind of did them all last minute was because as of Friday, only the Monkey Bread plugin existed, really. So I got a copy of Base Elements on Saturday, and I got a copy of 2.4use plugins yesterday morning. Unfortunately, I didn't get a great demo in here for that. So back to Keynote here. And let's start to wrap this up. All right, so that was the SDK plugin method. It's really simple. Drag and drop your plugin files. Develop the same way that you would develop on desktop. Check with the plugin creator to see if they have any documentation on what does and doesn't work with Xcode. Do some simple testing to find out if it works. Communicate with the plugin developers. This is new to them as well, so any feedback you can give them is great, and it's going to help us jump and really launch plugins into the next century, so to speak. So some considerations that you want to take into account when you are doing this multi-environment development is checking the compatibility. The iOS file system is more restrictive than, say, the desktop. So you don't really have a desktop on iOS. You have your documents path, you have a temporary path. And then on iOS, the other thing to consider is the sandbox. So each app in iOS is really buckled down, and this is what makes iOS great, is it's secure. The apps just can't reach out into other apps and take them over or do things. So the sandbox means that your app is just self-contained. It can communicate well to itself, but the reason one of the announcements was big yesterday was that since it is sandbox, there's some stuff right now with the plugin engine, with the plugin SDK that we're using to write plugins that we just can't do. So we can't interface with like HealthKit, and we can't interface with HomeKit, and you need to use a framework in conjunction to be able to do dialog boxes, that kind of stuff. So hopefully in the future, that'll be part of the SDK that the plugin developers are using, so that they can give that functionality to you as a native functionality to be able to work with iOS even better. So now we're getting into the list of apps. Again, you're going to have, these are ones that you can search the App Store for. But again, these are the Roundtrip apps that are external. So these ones work with FileMaker Go. They also work with the iOS SDK if you want to use that same round-trip URL method. But support for them, since it's third-party, some of them haven't been updated in a while, including yours truly, the first one on the list in the left side. Doesn't work with the latest version of iOS 10, so that needs some updates as well. So there's plenty of stuff on here, though, to get into: an RFID reader, a picture manipulator, a barcode scanner, credit card scanner, that type of thing. These are the frameworks that are available. Most of these are from Alexi, but there's also a couple more that are out there. Monkey Bread had its own URL framework, but they came out with a plugin. So obviously the plugins, if I had the choice between the two, I would use the plugin. And then the free iOS SDK plugins that are out right now, this list has stars on it because these ones are still in progress. 2ForYou, they did provide me with a copy of those. So if you visit their booth, they might be able to give you a demo of what their two products do for iOS. Monkey Bread is leading the charge. It's a paid app, so but it has over 4,800 functions for the desktop version, and I think he's over 1,000 functions for the iOS version that are tested and working. Then Base Elements it's sort of somewhere in between. It's on a dev branch right now on their GitHub account. You can get that plugin, you can use it today, but it's completely untested. Actually, good point on that. So all the other, you might have been wondering, Mike, you've got a whole bunch of files on your desktop and you haven't explained what all of them do. I accidentally unplugged. Somebody texted me and my phone unplugged itself out of Xcode. Close some of this out. So really quick, what this stuff is. This is the app SDK that you download from FileMaker. These are my original icons that I fed in to get resized. This GPS file is the file that I host on my server to store that GPS information. That comes with TrackFM when you download TrackFM. Monkey Bread plugin comes as a DMG, has all the different versions of the plugin in there, as well as a number of demo files. So the demo files for Monkey Bread are really simple, but they're really useful because all of the scripting is already done for you. And everybody loves being able to copy and paste stuff in FileMaker. So this one probably looks pretty familiar. It's the same one I was using in mine to extract my zip file. So here's their one for image manipulation. Here's their one for word merging. This was our sample Word file. This zip file is the zip file of those images if you want to test this out on your own. Base Elements plugin. Here's the iOS simulator version that they have of the plugin. So I'm not going to go in that, but you can use a different version of the plugin to run your simulator so you don't have to use your phone. But I prefer using my phone because it's tactile and you can touch it and see how stuff behaves. And then Base Elements has their own testing package that you can download as well to test the functions and see how they work. So lots of files. You're going to get mostly all of that stuff in the session materials that'll be available about an hour from now at the follow-up link. All right, back to Keynote. So obviously this will have updates. Check the page in about an hour for this session, and I'm uploading a zip file of all these contents. If you're interested in this stuff, these are some related sessions that I would highly recommend you see while you're here. Most of them are on Wednesday. Actually, they're all on Wednesday. So if you want to line up your entire day for tomorrow, here you go. I'll leave this up on screen for a second. Actually, yeah. My next slide is thanks. So I honestly, I really wish I had more to share with you. Like I said, it's relatively new. Plugins have only been available since May. So I would highly encourage everybody here to go out to the vendors hall, and anybody that has a plugin out there say, I really want this in the iOS SDK. Can you make it for me? So right now it's really just this list of stuff that's out there. So we really want to grow this because it's really the future of iOS. Everybody get this? All right. So thank you, everybody. Please fill out evaluations. I do read all of that feedback. It comes to the speakers about a month from now or 2 months from now, and I read every one of your comments, and I'm very happy for those of you that I can help out. Obviously, look me up on the community, find me, send me messages. If you have questions about this or you're not getting something or Xcode is crashing and you have no idea why. I've been doing some Xcode stuff for like 3 years now, so I'm getting pretty good at debugging. And with that, I'm going to lead right into questions. So I don't know that we have stand microphones in the room this year, so I'll just repeat the questions as people give them to me, and yeah, we'll go from there. Thank you, everybody. All right. Distributing apps in the App Store. I think it might be a little bit of parent company acknowledgement. I don't have an official answer on that, just pure speculation. So it can be done. There are apps in the App Store. There's a golf scoring app. There's a couple other apps that are in the App Store that got through the approval process and were built in the 15 SDK. I think in the future, with the way we're headed, that that position might eventually change where this is a full-blown app development platform. And I'm looking forward to that. So repeating that, someone commented that it's very easy to accidentally overwrite all of the data in your file by just reloading the solution file with that setting. So that's worrisome if you're an app developer, because if you're developing an app in Swift, then your app just randomly rewrites all your user data. That's a huge liability issue. So if you are thinking about doing that, make sure that you read into and test out what each one of those solution copy options in your file do. That is this setting. I'll show it to you again. Bring back up Xcode. My mouse has disappeared. All right. There it is. So in this config file, this launch solution file copy option is the one. So always, once, and on version change. So that's when it's going to reload the .fmp12 file. So make sure to study up on that if you're thinking about it. When you're using this, you're the app developer, right? So it's your responsibility to test things out on new releases. Most of the iOS releases, the minor changes, so 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, aren't going to break any functionality. It's the major ones you have to worry about. But if you're doing a distributed app, you do need to worry about that. And if you're thinking, that's another thing, if you're thinking about releasing iOS apps in the App Store, if iOS releases an update, so like iOS 11 comes out and you're a couple months behind with your plugin developers or with the SDK, the iOS SDK being updated with compatibility, your app's not going to work for some of the people in your market group during that time until you can update it. So it's something to keep in mind. If you do a native app, then you're going to have full control over fixing something and putting it out to the App Store with an update. But if you sign up for an Apple developer subscription, you get access to the beta, and you can do simulator tests using an iOS 11 device. So you can do a little bit of proactive testing before that actually gets released to the masses. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sure. Core Scope was an app I built, I think about 2 years ago now. It is an app that gets all of the metadata out of an iPhone. So battery state, like if it's charged, what your battery percentage is, what your headphone level is set at, if sound is currently running on the background, all of the device identification stuff like the IMEI, which is like the MAC address, the name of the phone, like anything you could want to know about the iOS device, it puts into a big like key value pair array and returns it. So something in iOS 10 changed in the way they handle URLs, and that broke the app. So right now it currently doesn't work in iOS 10. If you have iOS 8 or 9, it still works, but I'll be fixing that as I release the plugin as well a little bit later. Had a little bit more pressing thing to take care of before before DEF CON. It supports 8.3. I updated to the latest version of Xcode before I started putting all this stuff together. So I'm on 8.3.3. But I would use these, like I said, the 16.0.2 SDK, the latest one they released. So it is compatible with that latest version of Xcode. And I'm also running Sierra 10.12. So look at that, mid-2012 and still chugging. Yes. Since I work from home, I've got a big iMac at home, and when I get on the road, I only have my older laptop to demo with. So, anybody else? Did everybody find this useful? Can I get some instant feedback from you? Thanks. Great. I was expecting more questions because I showed off a lot of technical stuff, so I'm glad you guys all picked it up. So really, we're done for now. I'll turn off my microphone, but if you have questions, please come up and let me know. Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.